Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Nemesis back here from Comic Crusaders, and I'm here to bring you another video review today. Today, we're going to talk about Die number 15. Die, written by Kieron Gillen and drawn by Stephanie Hans. This is one of my favorite comic series that's out there going on right now. If you haven't gotten a chance to check it out in our last Virtual Con 2, we got a chance to talk with both Kieron Gillen and Stephanie Hans. Kieron obviously is involved with a number of different projects. One of the best comic book writers out there right now, very talented guy. Check out his stuff. And then anybody that follows me on Twitter, you know that I'm a huge fan of Stephanie Hans, one of my favorite comic book artists. So I'm really looking forward to talking about this comic book with you today. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the book we're talking about right here, Die number 15. Very, very, very good book. This book wraps up the third story arc in the Die series so far. So each arc has been five issues. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. Let's kick it off right here. So for all of you who are not familiar with Die, Die is a series based on the original premise was what happens if that fantasy role-playing world that you play in turns out to be real. Okay, and there's a number of different things that happen, and I don't want to get into all the specifics. I would encourage you, if that tagline right there speaks to you, go pick up the first issue, check it out, read it. I think you'll be hooked. But a number of different things have happened over these three story arcs that we've had so far, and that's kind of where I want to focus when we're going to talk about the writing here, done by Kieron Gillen. Gillen has a definite plan for this role-playing world. He's done a number of things with this. He's actually created a role-playing system based on this comic book series, which is cool. You know, I'd encourage you to check it out. I'm always into new role-playing systems, trying it out. A little while ago, I tried a new role-playing system by one of our fellow Crusaders, David Taylor, and that was a great system as well. So, you know, it's always fun to do things like that. And Kieron Gillen has come up with this world and come up with this role-playing system, and they go together. But the world itself is really, really fascinating. So the first arcs, issues 1 through 5, that Gillen wrote, it was largely focused on the characters, these individuals that came into this world. They first appeared in this world as children. They were missing for, I believe it was a year, and then came back. They were in that fantasy world for quite a long time. One of the characters was actually missing an arm. There's a number of different things that happen. And then as adults, they are drawn back into this world. And you see them dealing with ramifications of that, readjusting in this world, finding out why they've been brought back. There's a number of things that go on, and I'm not going to spoil for you, obviously. But it was really that first arc was almost like a reimagining of that classic 1980s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon that a lot of us of my age, or a little older, or a little younger, we grew up with, and it's now been reimagined for a more mature audience, and it was fantastic. And then Gillen's second arc really focused on building out this world of Die and fleshing it out more. We had the characters realizing what their place was in the world, what exactly they had done in the past when they were there, their ramifications of their actions on the future, and taking some responsibility, which then dovetailed nicely into this third arc, which is wrapping up here in issue number 15. And here, Gillen went, I'm not going to say sideways because that it's got a negative connotation, but he went in a different direction. And the first two arcs had they had action, they had drama, they had revelations about the world and about the characters. But this third arc was very much how do I put it? Not an emotional roller coaster. It was a deep dive into political systems in this world, more of a look into how the world actually functions from a macro to a micro perspective. You know, it's like, what are the rules of the world? as far as how the world functions with magic and everything else, but also how do the peoples that inhabit this world, how do they interact with each other, and what role do the characters have in that? We also got some very interesting revelations about how this world is relevant to all of us normies here who live in, the quote unquote real world. So that was pretty good stuff. It was really good. Um, Definitely had a different feel to it, though. And we're going to get into this a little bit when we really get into the artwork, because those first two arcs really felt like classic role playing fantasy. There were elements of steampunk in there and a bunch of other things, but it was always had that role playing fantasy aspect to it. This one felt like a drama, and imagination, or a look at the politics and social interactions within this world based on a fantasy role playing system, fantasy role playing world. Subtle difference, but important, because we were looking at the descent, or the loss of power by some characters and other characters in the ascendance, and we're going to definitely see that in the artwork when we get to it. But overall, I have to say that Gillen is really at his best, in my opinion, when he can take these worlds, build them out, and then use them to examine the emotions and motivations and the relationships of his characters. And very much in this series, and in this last issue in particular, all of the different twists and turns we get, some of them are very dramatic, but they all feel earned and authentic. And I really can't give much higher praise than that when I'm speaking about a writer, because so many times writers jump to one place or another, and it feels like we, the readers, are sitting there going, how did this even happen? It doesn't seem authentic to the story. It feels like this is just where you wanted them to go. And so you wrote it that way and placed them there without giving us any background or any real work into making sure that the characters' journey to get to that point feels real and organic. And so Gillen has done that to great effect here. And then in trademark fashion for how he ends the arcs in this series, he leaves us with a cliffhanger. And that cliffhanger promises to go and take the next story arc in yet another completely different direction. And it looks like, I will give you a little spoiler here, so spoiler alert, it looks like this next story arc is going to be all about classic Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, it's going to be dungeon delving, which is something they haven't done yet in the series. So I'm looking forward to that. And that should be issue 16 through 20, which I believe if they're not already finished with it, they are working on it. It'll be coming out. So with that in mind, that wraps up what I wanted to talk about as far as it relates to Kieron Gillen and his writing. So let's get straight into the art. So let's look first and concentrate on these covers. Each cover that Stephanie Hans has done in this series has been a work of art in itself. There's so many different layers to it, and each one has a different feel, which kind of reflects not only the story arc, but that series as a whole. And you can't say much more than that for a cover artist. Stephanie Hans is famous for her covers, as you all probably know. And each cover that she's done in this series shows you exactly why she's famous for doing that. That doesn't take away from anything inside of the books, because the inside of the books are just as beautiful, if not more so, than the covers themselves. But each one of these covers is just worthy of collection and worthy of putting up on your wall. And in fact, I don't think you can see it behind me, but I've got several die covers up on my wall because I love them so much. So let's get to this next piece of art. All right. This is Isabel. And I think she's the spellbinder. Her powers are, or the godbinder. I think that's what she's called. Excuse me if I miss it. My memory isn't always great when it comes to some of these details. But this is what I was talking about with some characters are transcendent in this arc. Their power is building, and others are descendant, and the time of reckoning is coming for them. Isabel is one of these characters. And you look at this artwork by Stephanie Hans, and I think it's fascinating how, okay, obviously the pose and the anatomy there shows that she is going through some sort of emotion, possibly grief, possibly a realization dawning of what is going on with her. But then you look behind her, and that's a god figure who is calling in her debts with Isabel, the godbinder. And I think this is a really successful panel because it shows she has used the color to good effect. Stephanie Hans has used the color to good effect on the god behind her, with the light and it's almost like ocular occlusion, like you would get in video games on the eyes there for the god figure. And so you really get the sense of an immortal being, a very powerful being. And earlier in the series, Isabel was often depicted as having this effect around her, as being able to go to the gods and get favors, get things, but owing them debts. And here, all of those debts are being called in, and you can see the effect on Isabel. You can even see it in the muted colors with which Stephanie Hans has drawn her. So even though the background behind her, the power behind the throne, for lack of a better term, is still radiant and all powerful, looking at Isabel herself, it has taken a toll on her, and her story is in a downward trend right now. And that is true in the story. So this is an example. My last review, Hellboy and the Seven Wives Club, I talked a little bit about it. When you have a writer and an artist mirroring each other, mixing together the art and the story so that the two complement each other and work together seamlessly, that's when comic book craft is at its highest. And I think we saw that in the last one, Hellboy and the Seven Wives Club. We're seeing that here as well. So let's go to the next slide and look at what we got going on here. Okay. This is just another example of what I was talking about, of the growth of characters and looking at what their story arc is currently. This is one of the central characters throughout most of the story, Ash. Ash is a dictator. She has the ability to use the voice to control people. The picture on the bottom is Ash very early in the series. In fact, this may be issue 1. I think it's from the cover. And you can see the effect. It often lights up in her left eye when she's using the voice. She's drawn with just those piercing eyes, has an emotion of, I'd almost say it was intensity and absolute focus. And it feels like this is a character that is going to overwhelm you. Fast forward 15 issues, and the top right corner here, this is Ash now in the series. I am not going to give anything away because I don't want to ruin Ash's journey for all of you who haven't read it yet. But I think you can see a marked difference here. There are even times when Ash's power has been drawn with that little flower around her eye, but it is more radiant and it has a deeper saturation on the color. You can definitely tell the look on the face is different. Everything about that screams that something has changed for this character. And true to form, it has changed for the character within the story. So I think this is a great example of Hans and Gillen, once again, not only working well together in book by book, but across the entire series. And you can see this downward arc in the fortunes of this character reflected in the artwork as well. This is the opposite. This is Matt, the Grief Knight. Now, I didn't pull any pictures of Matt from earlier issues, but I think you can see here, as we see the way Matt is drawn and his coloring, that, okay, the top right picture, Matt is coming to a realization, and this is what a little bit, I spoiled it for you, the dungeon. He's like, oh, fuck, we're going into dungeons. Excuse my language. But, you could see that earlier on the bottom left, he was fully into his powers and was having a come to Jesus moment with somebody. And I don't want to ruin the story, but you can see the marked difference in emotion. You can see the marked difference in motivation. In the bottom left corner, Hans has drawn the Grief Knight in a great action pose. This is her trademark. I almost want to say it's watercolor look, but this look is consistent throughout all of the series, and I think it adds to the ethereal, dreamy nature of the series, the sense that they are in this role-playing world. But I really I picked these two pictures because I think this is a great example within this issue itself of Hans using color, using framing to give you different emotions. But even here, if you look at Matt in the top right picture, he seems to be a stronger character, a more forceful character out in front. The way that the color is completely utilized in his character is saturated. The look on his face, yes, he has a look of distress about what is going on, but he is a man fully in charge of himself at this point in time in the story. And that is markedly different than Matt in other points of this story, this current story arc, and in story arcs previously. So this is definitely an example of a character on the rise within Die at this moment in time. All right. So this is a look back at some earlier artwork from Die, and I wanted you to contrast with some of what you saw from this current issue, issue 15. You can see this, I think this is from issues 1 and 2 of the series. And here we definitely had just full-on fantasy. You see Ash in the cover on the bottom right. Just a completely different look there for her at that point in time than what we saw previously. I believe it is another character called Saul's there on the bottom left. You know, and you're definitely getting this fantasy role-playing world. It screams magic. It screams danger. It screams adventure. And, you know, this transition and the different phases through the different story arcs, you can see this also in the artwork as a whole, which is why I showed you this, because once again, I think Stephanie Hans has done a great job taking the writing of Kieron Gillen and translating not only the action and words in the scenes into the artwork, but also the feel and emotion of what is going on throughout the arc, throughout the issue, and throughout each panel. It's been very effective. So, all right. So that is all I've got right now as far as the artwork and what I wanted to talk about with the writing in this series. Once again, I would have to say, for any of you out there who are fans of good storytelling, if you're a fan of role-playing games, supernatural fantasy, I think this is a book that you would very much enjoy, and I would highly encourage you to pick up the issue in this series. I don't think you'd be disappointed. I just realized I forgot to put my ratings up in a, visual format. So you excuse me, but I am going to give them to you. I want to give out the credits first. Like I said, the writing for this issue was done by Kieron Gillen, who also, a couple other things that he's written you might have seen. He's currently writing for Marvel Warhammer, Marneus Calgar, great series. Definitely worth picking up if you're a Warhammer 40K fan. He also wrote The Wicked and The Divine. Very good as well. The artwork's done by Stephanie Hans. She did Journey into Mystery as well. She's also done Storm. She did some work on Storm for Marvel. And then the letters are done by Clayton Cowles, and the publisher of this book is Image Comics, if you're looking for it in your local comic book store or on Comixology or wherever you pick up comics. So let's get right into the scores, and then we'll finish up this review. So writing. The writing for this issue was good. Once again, like I said, I really am becoming more, I'm becoming harder in my ratings because, if not, I'd be giving out 5s all over the place. When I say this is a 4.5 of 5 stars, that is a very, very solid score. It's very good, top-notch writing. So nothing to be taken away from Kieron Gillen there. It's just that's kind of where it fell out when I was looking at everything going on. The art itself, once again, very good. I don't think this is the strongest drawn book in the series yet, so I couldn't give it a 5 for Stephanie Hans, but professionally done up to a very high standard, so I gave it also 4.5 of 5 stars. The inking, there were a few panels here that I thought could have been inked a little better, so the score got dinged a little bit. If you look throughout the book, there are a few panels that I thought, if this had been inked a little bit more, it might have been more dynamic. I will give Stephanie Hans always the benefit of the doubt in thinking that she did that on purpose. But from my point of view, from my looking at it, I dinged it a little bit, and so I give her a 4 of 5 stars for inking. Color, I thought the use of color, she always does an amazing job using color, and once again, she did an amazing job using color in this book. Top marks, 5 of 5 stars for her use of color in this issue. So with all that, the overall score I give to this book, die number 15, is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Check it out. Check out the series. I think you'll very much enjoy it. Until then, please hit like and subscribe down below. Check out all of our great content on our Comic Crusaders YouTube channel, and then check us out on comiccrusaders.com. And go ahead, you can see it on the bottom. Follow me, Nemesis, on Twitter at NemesisFC2. I put artwork up there. I put stuff from my fellow Crusaders and all of that. So yeah, just check that out. Drop me a line if you want me to review a book or something, or just have a comment. I always love to hear from all of you. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I will see all of you later. I'm out.